the main aim of my presentation is try to unveiling or unmasking certain areas of meaning linked to a semiotic of the face in the field of AI and digital arts. Framing the problem of the face through artistic languages that use computer technologies and artificial intelligence requires focusing on a series of premises necessary for the construction of the object under analysis. So here we go. The face, okay, yes, so the face is studied here as a dynamic dispositive that oscillates between the natural world and the cultural universe. And in this fluctuation, it innervates a network of semiotics, expressive and communicative relationships, capable of framing the image par excellence of the human being. It is a complex image, of course, at once a semiotic mediation between interiority and exteriority, and an interface between the singularity of the individual and the plurality of society. So the mediatization that allows the face is, when it's declined in the field of AI and digital arts, opens up a whole series of issues related to the digitalization of visual culture, the spread of communication and information technologies, the research increasingly focusing on cognitive reproduction of use of hardware and software. So visual continuity effects such as morphing or surveillance tool of panoptic reminiscences and machine learning programming models are just one of the technology increasingly used in the field of artistic experimentation. In this sense, if we accept as valid the hypothesis that modern Western society is a facial society, as already suggested by Thomas Macho at the end of the last century in 1996, it should be not difficult to recognize in the current pervasiveness of faces produced through digital or AI technology, a faciality that challenges us with new questions on the dynamic of recognition of singularity and por ende of otherness. So defining this face as a dispositive also implies recognizing the performativity of facial models that circulates in a given culture. In this sense, we can just remember some inquiries like those of Jean Rivera at the beginning of the last century, where she defines femininity as a mask, or Ronald Barthes' analysis of the face of Greta Garbo defined as a face object, or Laura Mulvey's reflection on the scopophilia of classical Hollywoodian cinema. And these three examples, of course, just as in a quick review, they account for the effects of an agentivity that modifies, transforms, and reproduces sociocultural facialities. But what happens when the material condition of this agentivity, of this facial performing, are artificial? Since the first study in the field of the recognition of facial patterns by artificial intelligence, and we can just remember the first study published in 1963 by Woody Bledsoe and Maticians, a study that was titled "A Proposal for a Study to Determine the Feasibility of a Simplified Face Recognition Machine." There has been a widespread diffusion of artificial facial images, from the manufacturing industry to the insurance sector, from healthcare to finance, from social media to development of smart city, from surveillance in airports, shopping center, or the artistic practice we face with artificial faces. So this flood of faciality that reconfigures aesthetic aspect and biopolitical dynamics of the face led us to witness to an accelerated digitalization of culture and the process of technological transformation that has led to the reconstruction of reality on the basis of a binary standardization and what we can call in semiotic terms, a dematerialization of the signifier. In this context, thanks to the development of artificial vision, otherwise known as computer vision, and the implementation of algorithms capable of automating the construction of perceptual models, artificial intelligence systems are now able not only to detect or recognize faces, to identify or verify them, but also to produce them artificially through automated procedures and inferences, as in the case of facial images produced through deep learning and by generative adversarial networks. On closer inspection, all these phenomena occur in an iconosphere in which most images are produced and consumed by the same algorithms that govern artificial intelligence and vision. Paul Virilio defined this technology, because he did it in 1989. So he defined this technology as machines that see, while Trevor Paglen more recently speaks about invisible images to define the flow of images produced by machines and for machines. So this context opens up a territory of hybridizations between natural and artificial intelligence that, to my standpoint, needs urgently to be understood and analyzed. Reflecting on the production of artificial facial images in digital and AI arts places us within a territory of intersemiotic visualization, a territory of level of commensurability between natural and artificial intelligence. This territory is to be imagined as a space where we can trace those facial images belonging to digital iconosphere whose faciality is considered as a product of artificial agentivity. In a theory of semiotics, Umberto Eco states that the iconic sign do not have the same physical properties as the object, but it simulates a perceptual structure similar to that which would be simulated by imitating the object. So recovering Eco's lessons and applying it to the intersemiotic territory implies to be able to trace levels of similarity between the recognition of facial images produced by a human agentivity and one produced by artificial agentivity. In the light of this level, it will be possible to identify what these similarities stimulate and how to analyze how these stimuli do things. So the current diffusion of artificial facial images resemanticize certain practices that have characterized our societies since immemorial time, such as, of course, the recognition of a face. These ancient practices is interrogated here on the basis of one specific aspect and from one digital artwork. So the aspect is the identification as the linking of the face, of the image of a face to an individuality, and the analysis corpus, so the AI and digital artwork, is transformed into a test bench where the following question can be tested. How can the phenomena of individuation be framed when it is the effect of an artificial agentivity? So, okay. So bearing these questions in mind, I consider AI art as a very fertile field for dialogue and contact between human and artificial intelligence. In this sense, AI art is here understood as a human field that implies algorithms as materials, as tools for the creation of an artistic piece. I will now show you a teaser of this installation that combine AI arts and more plastic traditional arts, and we will see how. The installation is called Nonfacial Portrait, and it's realized in 2018 by a duo, a Korean duo based in Seoul, and the artwork was commissioned by Seoul Media City Biennale. So the duo asked to 10 painters to make the portrait of one same person, but the painters had one rule to follow. The painting of the face must not have been detected by 3 different automated face recognition technologies, 3 algorithms of face recognition that monitored the pictorial practices, but the final piece would have to be formally and compositionally recognizable within the portrait artistic genre. So this is the dialogue between artificial and human agentivity. So the artistic genre of the portrait as a genre associated with the identity, so and with the topic of individuation. The result of this tricky exercise in style was organized in an installation that deals with faciality as a territory of semiosis, where the different aesthetics, visual and cognitive and textual, of course, meanings that rise around face and identity can make visible the tensions that exist between artificial and human agencies. And here I show you the trailer. So you can see the squares, no? The eye of the algorithm that it's monitoring the practices, and the reaction of the painter through this monitoration. And these are one of the results. Now, if we have time, I will show you some other videos later. And this is the final installation. So those are the 10 portraits. And this is the list of the participants. Okay, so. Okay. So generally speaking, automated facial recognition is a technology that installs itself on the threshold of complex negotiation between extremely dense issues such as those concerning recognition, identity, and access to policies to the right of citizenship. The dissemination of automated face recognition technologies confront us with a question about our contemporary visual culture concerning the problem of the dissemination of disembodied identities. And here I'm quoting the US scholar Kelly Gates, who in 2011 trying to frame this problem about the disembodied identities as the existence of visual and textual representation of bodies that circulates independently of physical bodies and that are recognized through a disembodied visual perception. So to reflect on the threshold between human and artificial agency about visual recognition, it faces us with at least 3 questions. So the first question is concern the automated facial recognition technology as a form of machine vision that is used to recognize human beings and yet operates on scenes since it involves an invisible operation. Its recognition processes are inaccessible to the uninitiated, let's say. So yet this technology increasingly governs people's lives in various institutional contexts. So one question that emerged from this third threshold is, what is the process through which recognition is defined in computer vision. So a second tensions concerns continuity and discontinuity between machine visual perception and organic human visual perception. And we can ask ourselves what historical continuities and discontinuities can be identified in recognition processes. And finally, a third tensions concern the relationships between the recognition processes in an automated facial recognition system and the type of knowledges that it can produce. So indeed, a successful automatic recognition operation results in a production of information that is often able to act on a subject's identity. So, and here is like the last question and the last and maybe most important question for this presentation today. So how do artistic practices that use facial recognition technology, can they respond, articulate, or address the implication of using these same technologies? Okay, so, but maybe we have to before to go to the artificial AI arts, maybe it's better to have a step back and think about the long-term relation that we have with images produced by non-human agentivity. I'm referring to the studies of, concerning about faces of Massimo Leone, where he points out to long-lasting and dialoguing tradition concerning akeropoieta, I don't know if I pronounce it well in English, facial images that are images produced by a human agentivity, which is a practices or maybe a sign, maybe that's better to say, which cross visual culture from east to west, from north to south. Here, for example, we have the case of the Guadalupe Virgin, who is one of the divine, in this sense, human images produced by a divine agentivity. So the access to the representation of the face is historically and still today in a large part of cultures reserved for practices for precise aesthetic and biopolitical conditions. So it should come as no surprise that even in this kind of images made by human agentivity, facial images are recognized as having a special aura capable of attributing extraordinary powers, images endowed with an absolute authenticity that determines an unmediated interpretation. And as Leone wrote, and I quote, "Since the face is so central in human behavior, facial images that are considered as produced by a non-human agency receive a special aura throughout history and culture, as if they were endowed with extraordinary powers. Furthermore, since in many societies the face is read as the most important manifestation of interiority, non-man-made images of faces are attributed a status of authenticity and as if they were the most sincere expression of some otherwise invisible agency." And I finish the quote. If we bear in mind these, we can see how these images still continue to generate meaning thanks to a particular process of legitimization to which artificial intelligence has been subjected. And I refer to the process of artification. The expression coined in 2012 by sociologists Natalie Einig and Roberta Shapiro designates the sociocultural process that consolidates a non-artistic practice, such as, for example, computer science, into an institutionalized artistic discipline, such as, for example, portraiture. Furthermore, there is another aspect that comes on the top of what Eric Satin defined as the artificial reason, an aletheic process that guarantees the unveiling, the manifestation of the reality of phenomenon beyond their appearance. So the technology underpinning artificial intelligence pretend to be an organ enabled to access reality more reliably than we can and to reveal to us dimensions that have so far remained hidden from our consciousness. In this, it takes the form of a technos logo, o sea, of an artifactual device endowed with the power to tell with either greater precision and immediacy the theoretical exact state of things. So the combination of a technology that is both artifactual and aletheic updates the erratic dimension of the two traditions described by Leone. So today, automated face recognition technologies seem to be endowed not only with the extraordinary power to conflate natural and artificial intelligence, but also to attribute it a status of authenticity to images on the basis of automated inferences that qualifies identity. But what happens, in fact, when the automated intelligence recognition systems recognizes incongruities, or maybe better to say, when the recognition process of the individuality, rather than revealing a singularity, opacifies or make dense the automated agency? Recovering Louise Marin studies, we can speak about opacity, or maybe better, we can speak about how digital arts is capable to opacify, to mattifying the aletheic promise of the artificial reason while making the automated process of inferencing dense material touchable. And here I'd like to show you how the process can be considered as opaque. Here we can see the practice of one of the painters and the gestures that he made for making opaque, for the opacity of this recognition. So we will see how, okay, I'll let you maybe first see the video and then I'll comment it. So this is the final result. The three algorithm systems cannot detect in what we can still recognize as a portrait the face, a facial image. So the installation of facial portrait, it is crossed by this opacifying research, a look with which to thicken the erratic transparency of digital technology in order to restore an agentivity to artificial intelligence. Nonfacial portrait propose opaque and densely mediatized strategies with which unmask the computer vision process of individuation. The monitoring by the facial recognition system acts directly on the tense artist's painting practice, and what the computer vision identifies as facial stimulate errors, or maybe perhaps it should be better to say erroneous, wandering representation. The tensions between the error recognized by the artificial intelligence and the artistic wandering of human intelligence is confronted with the textual dimension of the portrait. What are the strategies deployed by each painter to circumvent artificial intelligence while remaining within the perimeter of the genre? And I would like to show you another example, which I find really interesting also, thinking about visual semiotic category, like plastic category, like for example, topological and eidetic categories. As you can see now, the final strategy of the human agentivity is to dislocate the elements of the face throughout the painting, but the final result is still a portrait that won't be recognized by the algorithm. So, and I go to conclusions. With the diffusion of artificial intelligence, we are witnessing the transition from a biopolitical mechanism of disciplining that focuses on the individual, as Foucault already stated in 1975, and therefore on the dyad individuality of subjectivity and plurality of society, to a biopolitical mechanism of decomposing the individual into data and recomposing society into metadata. Disciplines such as biometric or geolocation systems such as GPS, radio frequency, identification technology, data mining, and analyzing algorithms, so all work thanks to a global protocol that aim to resolve identification as data body. And however, as already analyzed by Donna Haraway in 1991 with their studies on both on the promises of the monster and the manifesto, cyber manifesto. So as already analyzed by Haraway, human and non-human animals are not transparent entities, but they are opaque, dense materiality. So opacifying matter, whatever it may be, from flesh to beads, or from, for example, painting to canvas, become an operation with which to break the theoretical ideality of transparent representation, a gesture that organizes communicative intentionality and proposes a transhuman ethic of the face, a strategy for the construction of interaction with the non-human on the basis of epistemological premises, but through a symbiotic interconnection between natural and artificial intelligence that might be able to underline the hybrid and opaque term of our existence. And I finished, and I'd like to thank you for your attention.